How's it going, guys? Mike Murtis, Gamer Logic here, and today's topic is, what was the first video game soundtrack you ever purchased? Now, chances are, if you've played a video game, you've dug one of the soundtracks you've heard from these many games. Maybe it was the first time you played Tony Hawk and you dug the soundtrack that was used for that. Or maybe you were on the PlayStation and you played Wipeout XL and you heard that fantastic electronic music soundtrack that just fit in so well with the visuals that the game had. Now, for me, a gamer in the 80s and growing up, soundtracks weren't a easy to acquire thing. You just couldn't go to the local Kmart, Walmart and find a soundtrack for Castlevania 2. There just was no market for it. Honestly, there's still not a huge market in the US, at least in physical media form, for video game soundtracks, though they've become more and more popular, I guess, over time. They're very easy to get digitally. But back in the 80s, if I wanted a video game soundtrack recorded, if I wanted, say, a song from Contra and Castlevania or whatever, just take this black boombox that my sister got, and she eventually handed down to me, and I would put it next to my 13-inch black and white TV, and recording from the onboard mic on the boombox, and getting the sound from that 13-inch TV's little tiny speaker, I would record my NES music. Did it sound fantastic by the time it was done coming through that little speaker and through the onboard microphone? Not really, but it was enough for me to listen to. But I remember putting mixtapes together of various NES games, Ninja Gaiden, Contra, Castlevania, and I'd put together these NES mixtapes. It was always a huge thing for me when I found out that there was a sound test mode for games. Probably my favorite sound test mode that I can think of was Castlevania 3. You could play through all of the songs in that game, so that was the perfect ability and way for me to record the music from Castlevania 3. Now, what's interesting later on the line, because my dad noticed I took a liking to recording these game soundtracks, was he was very much into different audio pieces of equipment, tape decks. He was a guitar player. He was also a musician in my family, so he had a lot of cool equipment. So at one point, he taught me how to take my NES and connect it to the RCA jacks on it so I could hook that into our tape deck. And from that point, I was actually checking volume levels and getting the audio levels straight in and learning to record on an actual tape deck through audio inputs. So in a sense, NES music is kind of what got me started on recording music and mixing down stuff and eventually dubbing and speeding up stuff. I used to speed up music of NES games and slow it down after I worked on the recordings of tape decks, just for the fun of it, just to see what it was like. And you know, later in life, I became a musician myself as well as a DJ, so that was kind of the grassroots of my music career, I guess you could say. But to get back on topic, when we hit the mid-90s, video game soundtracks started being made on a regular basis. Now in Japan, they've always been a pretty regular thing, I think, since probably the late 80s to the early 90s. But my first purchased video game soundtrack actually came from the Nintendo Power Super Power Club. They used to send you these little catalogs, and for a certain amount of money, you could pick up various Nintendo merchandise that was exclusive to that catalog. So what was the soundtrack that I picked up for the first time ever? Donkey Kong Country. That's right, Donkey Kong Country. I love the music to the Donkey Kong Country soundtrack. I love it. Some of my favorite tunes in video games on there. I really love the minecart level music. The jungle music is excellent. The underwater music is classic, and I wanted to have the soundtrack to that, an official one compared to the one I taped myself. I was still taping video game music at that point. So, because I didn't have a CD player at that point, my mom went ahead and ordered the cassette tape version of it for me. So, you know, 2-3 weeks later, get a package in the mail, and there is the cassette tape soundtrack to Donkey Kong Country. and I would go outside with my Walkman and just listen to that thing like crazy. I wore the tape out, and unfortunately, you know, I don't know what happened to it. I lost the cassette case and the jacket to it, but I had the cassette for a long time, and I think maybe I threw them out. I don't know. All my old cassette tapes have mostly disappeared, unfortunately, so really don't know what happened to it. But that Donkey Kong Country soundtrack was really special to me, and I will always remember that being the first video game soundtrack I ever purchased. Now, for future soundtracks, shortly afterwards, we would get another arcade game that would get converted to the Super NES by Rare, and that would be Killer Instinct. Killer Instinct was a fun fighting game for me back in the day, but what was really cool was the fact that the first edition prints of it came with a Killer Cuts CD, and these were studio produced tracks that were even better than the original arcade version, with full vocals and everything. And it was a great electronic music soundtrack. It was fun. You know, a lot of it's kind of cheesy, a little hokey, but I still listen to it from time to time and love hearing it because it just brings back so many memories. Now, when I got Killer Instinct, the first time I got Killer Instinct, we rented it, and actually because we had such a regular reputation for coming in and renting movies and renting games at our video store, the employees at the video store let us rent Killer Instinct like 3 days earlier than it was supposed to come out. So we got it ahead of time, which was really awesome. And I don't think they gave it to future renters, but they let us take the Killer Cut CD. So, you know, got it home, listened to it on my sister's CD player because I think she was the only one with a CD player at the time. And she had a tape deck attached to her CD player, so what did we do? We recorded that CD, and I basically got a full-on audio CD or audio cassette of Killer Cuts just from renting it. So even though the game had to go back eventually, I still was able to listen to the awesome Killer Cut soundtrack. Still one of my favorites to this day, and obviously I still have the soundtrack to it. Now really quick, going on a digital front of things, I can tell you the first MP3 of, and actually it wasn't even MP3, it was MP2, and I swear the website was Bob's Hardware, but that might be incorrect. This site had MP3 rips of Castlevania music, and this MP2, I should say, MP2 music rip of this certain Castlevania game was Castlevania Rondo of Blood, which this was when I was first getting on the internet and never knew this game existed. So learning about this new Castlevania game and downloading that MP3 and hearing CD quality music of a Castlevania game blew my freaking mind. I will never forget that. And eventually the Castlevania dungeon would appear and they would have MP3 soundtracks on there, and I would spend my days on a 56K modem downloading as many MP3s of the various Castlevania soundtracks that were out there. So much fun. My question is, what was the first game soundtracks you guys got a hold of? Did you purchase any of them, or was it straight to the digital age for you as far as getting soundtracks? And maybe some of my Japanese viewers are a little bit more familiar with some of the soundtracks that are over there. Maybe they got some far ahead of any of us here in America. So curious to hear your thoughts, and thanks for watching.